Hello everyone, my name is Jafari and I would like to welcome you to another video. In this one, we are going to answer a fundamental question when we go about data pre-processing using programming. Why is it that looping over the rows of our data sets is not a good idea? And there are better tools we can use, such as mapping a function or using the pandas apply function. This is important for us to understand the reason for this, why that is the case, because that will have a consequential understanding for you to be able to generally do better as far as creating a code that is more efficient. All right, let's get started. Okay, so a few things. Every Friday at 3 p.m. I've been putting out a video, and this is one of those videos that you will get to watch. And the fact that this is my YouTube channel, if you click on this link, and this is my YouTube channel at jafari.com. This is my GitHub repository. If you click on this, and also this is the GitHub repository for this specific video, right? So I've already put the pre-recording. It's basically this empty Jupyter Notebook file. I haven't done anything to it. This is just, setting up the things that we need to do. And once I'm done, I will upload this after recording to the same repository here, right? So you can download the after recording. All right, so this video, basically, we want to answer this, iterate or map. We do know the answer to that. It's better to map a function versus doing a loop that iterates over the rows of our data set. And in this video specifically, we're going to understand why that is the case. That's going to be very important, right? So here's the task that we're trying to solve, right? First, we are creating a random data set, right? It's just some data we want to work with. So this is our random data set. It used pandas and NumPy to generate some random data. And specifically what we are having here is just a person DF that has, the data of 30,000 random individual, their height, their weight, and their BMI, body mass index, which is an indicator of health that is calculated based on their weight and height, and then their gender. So based on these three, this basically every one of these rows is just an imaginary person, right? So in this task, the task that we want to get done, the data manipulation task, is we want to figure out who is healthy and who's not. Right, but when a male individual's BMI is between 20 and 25, they're healthy, and when their BMI is smaller than 20, they're considered underweight, and when their BMI is higher than 25, they are overweight. For female, it's a little bit different. BMI between 19 and 24 is healthy, under 19 is underweight, and above 24 is overweight. Right, so that's the task we're trying to achieve, right? So we can do this in two different ways. One is to iterate over our code, basically our data set rows, right? And also, or do a map, right? So if you don't really know what mapping a function or using the pandas apply function is, I have two separate videos that can help you with that. I'm going to put the link up here, so you can use those if you don't know what they are, and then come back to this video. However, if you do know what those are, we can just continue, right? So these are two pieces of code that does the same task. One iterate over the rows of the data, and the other one maps a function to the rows of the data. So let me copy this function and put it into a new chunk. All right, so we can talk about it. So this is the one that uses iteration, right? So it's like some sort of like a programming method, like iterate over the rows of our data, right? So we've got, of course, a for loop. First, we read the data that we saved up here, right? So we save that data into this person DF, the CSV, and then we iterate over our loop and on each iteration we check if the individual in this row is healthy or not, right? So that's basically what this does, right? We can see that this is how the orchestration between CPU, ROM, and RAM is, right? So the CPU is, we are sort of seeing it as a worker, which what it is, and then RAM is the workspace that the CPU needs to work on, and our ROM or our storage is basically where the data is, right? So this worker in this code, we get the worker to go grab the %df.csv and then input into %df, and then during that loop, which happens 30,000 times, the worker comes grab a row of the data and bring it in another part of the RAM, which is our workspace, and does something to it, and then come back and put some information into our %df, right? So this is what basically this code doing, right? So it grabs something from %df, go and do something on it, and come back and put the result there, right? So that's when we do the iteration. However, when it comes to using the mapping or applying, which basically they're the same thing, here we first create a function, and this function basically encode what needs to be done on each row, right? So you can see that on each row we need the value of the gender and BMI, right, from each row. And then based on those values, what we need to do based on those values is basically here, right? So instead of taking things in our own hands and having a loop, we encode everything into a function, right? And then map this function, right? Map this function to the attributes or to the columns that are important for this function, for what we need to do, right? So if we pay attention here, what we get CPU to do here is the same thing. The first two steps, we go grab the %df.csv, and then we go on %df, but then we get everything else. We sort of like outsource everything else to the pandas, to the Python mapping function, and we say, okay, this is our whole task. Python, in a smart way, goes and does everything on the file itself, right? So there is no going and coming back, right? So it would give Python the opportunity to just work on %df, right? And that is because that's why we can say that it is better to use mapping instead of iterating. I will say one thing, that mapping is better than iterating. However, it's not as good as vectorization and broadcasting. We'll have another video in the future to talk about why vectorization and broadcasting is even better than mapping. But for now, it's very important for you to understand why mapping is much better than just using iteration. All right, so this was conceptually, but now we can also time our codes to see which one is actually run faster, and if this makes sense, right? So I'm using the widget time here. So this is the mapping paradigm. All right. So let's run this. Maybe because it doesn't like it when this comes after the comment. So let me move that over. All right, there we go. So it's working now. So now we're timing how long it takes when we use the loop. And now let's go ahead and time when we use the mapping function, right? So we can see that we've got around 100 times improvement, right? So this is 43 milliseconds, much faster than 3.38 seconds. We could also do the same thing using the pandas apply function. So let me just go ahead and do that here real quick, right? So we can see that's basically the same. So here, instead of having gender and BMI, we have to pass into a row of the pandas data frame. So this one Let's see, we've got BMI and gender, right? So this is gender. So everywhere we say gender, we have to put row.gender with the same spelling, right? So let's just do that, and that's it. And then we have to say row.bmi. All right, so just quickly, now we can just say person df.apply this function, and we are specifying that we are applying it to every row, right? So this is using the apply function, and we can also time this. Here we go, and it's 460 milliseconds. This is not as fast as just mapping, but it's faster than doing a for loop, right? So we can sort of like also see a little bit of difference between mapping and applying. So in this case, mapping was better. All right, in this video, we understood why is it that it's better for us to stop using for loops and start using more sort of like higher level programming, right? When we use a higher level programming, is that this is what we need to do. You just outsource everything to Python or pandas, right? Instead of like getting things done by ourselves. And in one of the future videos, you're gonna get to understand why is it that, what is vectorization and broadcasting, if you don't already know, and why is it better even for us to use vectorization and broadcasting if we can, instead of using even mapping. All right, until then,